So good afternoon, everybody. So today we have Ron Hicks here with us. It's a pleasure having him here. He's a wildlife biologist with 35 years experience here in the Klamath Basin, and I'm sure he has a lot of great information to share with us about the water resource here on the basin. And I wrote you a little bit.
Oh,
and
thank you.
I think you're ready to start, Ron, and thank you so much for being here.
Okay, yeah, all right. So, so she was partly correct. I am no longer a wildlife biologist. I changed careers midstream in my life. So I was a biologist up until 1995. Well, actually, maybe a little past that. Worked for the federal government for 20 years. That's where I got most of my experience here in the basin. Went out on my own as an independent biological consultant. Made tons more money. I wish I could have qualified for that earlier in my career. I wouldn't have changed careers, but it was really good money as a consultant. And I now work in with people instead of animals. So I kind of changed mid-career in about 96 and working in social services and helping people. And we've been doing that since. So, but I love being a biologist. I got paid to have fun, traveled the world literally, got paid for it. And it was a lot of fun. So a little about myself. I went to Humboldt State University. They have a great natural resource program there. So if you're looking for a school, besides OSU, it's a good natural resource school too. But if you're in California, go to HSU instead of OSU. And I moved here, so I did a lot of work around the world literally before I came here. I worked for just a little bit about myself, so you trust me when I talk. I did a little bit of everything, worked for every federal land managing agency, natural resource land managing agency in the country, and one state agency. So that would be U.S. Forest Service, U.S. Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, National Marine Fisheries Service, and Arizona Department of Fish and Game. Am I missing one? Yeah, I'm missing one. I don't know. And then consulting in the private world. I worked from fisheries biology in Alaska to marine biology out in the Eastern Tropical Pacific. Worked in the tuna porpoise management branch, which doesn't really exist much anymore. But that was back in the 80s. I'm older than I look. I was back in the 80s when the tuna industry when the tuna industry was at odds with environmentalists because they were chasing, encircling, and trapping porpoise to get tuna. I don't know if you were around in the 80s and remember that. By the 90s, by the time the 90s came around, I moved here in 88, and that was actually the end of that. That was where I was working at the time. The office was in San Diego, but we worked out at sea, so I could fly with a diplomatic passport, which is really fun. People hop to attention when you flash your passport in Panama City because they think you're CIA or something. But I didn't look like it. I had long hair and I was carrying around these big 5-gallon buckets with porpoise parts and jaws and all kinds of crazy stuff. You had a passport. Yeah, but I had a diplomatic passport, so I always showed that. And the guys in the airport, they were all military with guns and stuff. They come on. Thank you. After all, they got to know us. They treat us as well. Don't try not to distract me. So moved here in 88, which interestingly enough was the year that the endangered suckers were listed. The short-nosed sucker and the lost river sucker. Actually worked in the Klamath River for as a consultant, for a biological consultant for out of Portland. And they were hired by the city of Klamath Falls. Was anybody here in the early 90s? You both were. Remember the Salt Caves Project? Yeah, so Salt Caves Project was proposed by the city. They had a bond, I think, for that. And so they had hired beat consultants out of Portland. And if you've been around a while, you might know Alan Everline. I met Alan, and actually at the time was dating his daughter. So I didn't want to work at the sea anymore, couldn't handle it. So I told him that. He called me up one day and said, "Hey, you want to work here? I said, yeah. So he connected me with this consulting firm. Well, actually, the guy, I forget his name. He was in charge of the project, Salt project for the city coordinator. English, so sent me a report and interview. Came here, worked on the Klamath River. So my first job here was down the Klamath River doing sucker surveys and all sorts of really fun stuff. And then that was coming to an end because it was temporary. And then I got a job with Bly Ranger District, worked in wildlife out of Bly Ranger District. Then a job came over to Bureau of Land Management for a wildlife biologist, really a little bit more than just wildlife, but they had to complete a congressionally mandated study for Congress to designate, to see if it was eligible, to designate the upper Klamath River as a national wild and scenic river. So I spent almost 2 years doing that. I did wildlife, fisheries, range, plant, or botany. I think I did those 4 disciplines, and we had about a 5-member team. And that was amazing. It was really, really cool. It's a lot of work. It was basically like an environmental impact statement. It wasn't called that. It was called the Klamath River Eligibility and Suitability Study for designation as a wild and scenic river. So after all that work, went to Congress, did the draft, did the final, and long after I left BLM in '95, it got designated as a wild and scenic river, which is really cool because that's what I was kind of looking for. But that's three classes of wild and scenic rivers: class 1, class 2, and class 3. Class 3 is the least restricted, and so it did get designated. Then I stayed with BLM and worked as a biologist until I made a huge career change in '95. So when I was with BLM, because of my work on the endangered suckers, I did everything for BLM, just as a general field biologist. But that's when the sucker had gotten listed, and the east side here, if you're geographically oriented, or hopefully the east side of Klamath and the west side of Klamath, the BLM Klamath Falls resource area is on both sides. So you can go to the west side here out of Keno. We did work with spotted owls, did all our spotted owl work out there, and the timber over that way. And then on the east side, when did other wildlife work and so on. But when the suckers became endangered, became a focus of BLM, they assigned me to the local, I forget what they call us, but we were just like a team of biologists that started looking at how to manage the sucker with the different agencies, including the Klamath tribes. So I worked closely with the Klamath tribes. Back in the day, that would have been Jake Kahn and Larry Dunsmore. You know them? Oh, wow.
Actually, I don't know Jake, but I do know Larry and I know Craig.
Yeah. Greg Benz was actually director. And funny enough, if you know people here, Mark Butner, I worked with Mark Butner. He was with the Bureau of Reclamation back then, but we did all the sucker work on the east side. But he's now head of the Klamath Tribes Fishery and Wildlife Department.
Oh, I haven't heard that.
Yeah, that's Mark Butner. And I haven't talked to him in 20 years, but anyway, that's what I heard. So we went to all the east side BLM resource area, east side streams for surveys, because we didn't know, the agencies and biologists didn't know what the exact range of the Lost River and Short-nosed sucker were. Kind of focusing on the sucker here, but just to kind of give you a brief history. My presentation is kind of long, so get kind of going. So it was really fun. Mark and I we just went out. We did mark and recapture surveys. We inserted pit tags, which is an dermal little thing that we could scan with, and it was kind of new technology back then. That was in early '90s. And then we would go back out and capture again, and then scan all the fishes we caught and kind of see where they were moving. And of course, Mark was an expert in suckers, so he could tell. I could never tell the difference between the suckers, but Mark could. So we never found anything. We did the whole watershed on the east side, which would be Gerber Reservoir, Miller Creek, Barnes Valley Creek, which comes into Gerber Reservoir. I don't remember. Everything over there that could have fish that could have come from the lake or come from any of the past way that the watershed here used to work, because actually, like even out at Willow Lake Reservoir, which is on the far end of Langeville Valley, what's the name of that? There's a reservoir there. can't remember. I just forgetting. No, it's not Malone. Anyways, so that Willow Valley Reservoir, I think. And so there's a creek that empties into Willow Valley Reservoir that flows kind of from the Gerber direction. It's not a tributary, but it flows.
Spot Creek.
Huh?
Spot Creek.
No, not Rock. It flows into Willow Valley Reservoir. Anyways, we surveyed that. And oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe the stuff we found because we did electrosonic survey. So we would just put on waders and shock the creek. And we found huge, giant, indigenous cutthroat trout, which are very rare around here. But again, that's left over from wherever nobody introduced them. They were just there. So we found cool stuff. We did reservoirs like on Bryant Mountain. We went everywhere and never found lots of short sucker. Most of them in that direction are small scale and large scale suckers, which again, I can't tell the diff. And I never really took the time to figure out the other ones. You can just say, no, it's this. Okay, so let's go about myself. So I'm talking today about basically a little bit of everything about the Klamath Basin, the watershed, the history, just a little bit of everything. And since you guys are from here, what was your name again? Theo? Theo? Are you from here?
No, I'm from Los Angeles.
So, okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So I might kind of be a little, you guys already heard of this, but for his sake.
I've been briefed about a little bit of the water problems here, so I know a little bit about
You do? Okay, good. Good. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the area history. I don't remember what my next slide is. Just showing pictures of the area. The town of Linkville was formed at the mouth of the Link River, which is where the Main Street Bridge is right there. That was Linkville, founded by George and Nurse in 1867. They changed the name to Klamath Falls in 1893. Yeah, that's just, okay, that's all you get on the city. You guys know most anyway. Klamath Falls had been known for its forest and rangeland, but the region was really remote from back then from the major markets to make money. So in 1909, the Southern Pacific Railroad came to Klamath Falls, which was a huge game changer. At that time, in the 1920s, 1909, they came, money started rolling in, people started rolling in, industry started rolling in. In the 1920s, Klamath Falls was the fastest growing city in Oregon, which I just read that for the first time. I never saw that before. I didn't know that. Until about the Great Depression, timber was king, so lumber was king. There was all lumber mills around here. They're everywhere. Timber was king really until the Depression started, and it nearly brought them into the timber industry, but they came back. So lots of mills, and they flourished around here until the 1980s. And again, I was involved in this too. Along came the spotted owl, and so I used to have to kind of hide my job. People knew I was out calling owls at night for deal, and I could have had a bullet on my doorstep. I'm not kidding. I was really careful because it was a timber town. No, ask any questions at any time. Interrupt me.
spotted out. What year was that?
So the spotted owl became listed not as an endangered species, but as a proposed for threatened species in the late 80s or early 90s.
Listed as an is threatened.
Yeah, threatened, not endangered. So all your land managing agencies, such as Beyond the Forest Service around here, we had to go out and start doing spotted owl inventories.
Late 80s.
Yeah. The late 80s. When did I started in 89. The spotted owl program was already going for BLM. So they already had other biologists working it. And when I finished when I had time, I would actually go out with them and call owls and stuff, which is really fun. I could still call spotted owls. I can take that. I call them now. One time I took my son and my nephew out with camping on the west side over by the mountain right there. It's one of my favorite spots. I hunt birds up there, but then also it's a great spot, little spot to camp by a creek. I was telling them, they were just kids, like 8 and 10 years old. I was telling them about the spot. I said, "Yeah, watch. I'll see if we can call them." And I called, and one flew in. I mean, like immediately landed in the tree right above us in this little creek we're on, and pooped on my nephew's head. He didn't poop on his head, but he pooped. Maybe he pooped on. I think he did, but I can't remember. But that was the coolest ever.
Can you need a call for it?
It's fun. It's been a while. That'll bring me. Make any noise like that out in the woods, and you'll call and spot it out.
It'd be great,
Anything works. It's too close.
it'd be great for guerrilla warfare.
Okay. Klamath Lake, talking about the lake. Just pictures here as we go through the top. Klamath Lake is the largest body of fresh water by surface area in Oregon. It's about 25 miles long, 8 miles wide. It has a surface area of about 140 square miles.
It's the largest.
It's it's the largest freshwater lake in Oregon. And I never read this before, but I found this when I was making sure on stuff. The stat I read said it's also the largest lake west of the Rocky Mountains in the north and in the west by surface area. By surface area, and I did not know that, so I put that in here.
We're in the northern hemisphere.
No, in the western United States, the largest body of freshwater lake west of the Rocky Mountains. So it takes in a lot of all the states west of the Rockies. I did not know that. Yeah.
In the US.
West of the Rockies
So north.
in the United States.
Okay,
Yeah. So that would be the U.S. states.
Got it, thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about the lake. It's a relatively shallow lake. The average depth is about 10 feet when the lake's full. It's fed by a watershed. So the Klamath Basin watershed, I think I have some maps, we'll get to it. The watershed is actually about 3,800 square miles. So if you the lake's over that way. So if you just go up to the lake and the whole watershed, all the mountains, the Cascade Range to the west, the High Desert Range to the east, all those rivers, the Williamson River, the Sprague River, the Saitan, that's actually a big one, thank you. I didn't put that in here. The Wood River, all those rivers drain into Upper Klamath Lake. So that whole watershed is about 3,800 square miles, which is huge. Drain into the Klamath River. Elevations in the upper basin, we're at 4,000 feet. You go to the Cascade Range, you're going to get to the highest areas. That's about around 9,000 feet. So that's looking south. That's Mount Shasta. And that is McLaughlin. I hiked up there finally after being here 35 years. I hiked up there a couple years ago. And the hardest hike I ever did. Like I said, I'm not a spring chicken, but I'm in pretty good shape for my age, but it was really hard. Precipitation varies in the basin in this area, 15 inches, approximately at the lower elevation, up to 60 inches at the higher elevation. That's probably like Crater Lake, places like that. Most of the lake, 92% of the lake is shallower than 12 feet. And I did not know this part, or at least maybe I knew it and I forgot because, again, I was working in this a minute ago. 1990, 2000, 2000, yeah, that's like 30 some years ago. Okay, there's a trench. The exception of this 12 feet is a trench that runs parallel to Eagle Ridge. If you look out at the lake, if you stand out here by the golf course, the Gentleman Golf Course, and you look west, Eagle Ridge is a spit of land that sticks out from it actually goes, if you're on Highway 140, if you go up over that's the little mountain right there. Huh?
Yep.
Yeah, go to Oak Mountain, go down the bottom of Oak Mountain, turn around, you're about the Eagle Ridge. Never been out, it's really cool to go look. But anyways, on the it would probably be on the east side of Eagle Ridge, the lake's western shore, contains the deepest waters of the lake, approaching 50 feet. So I did not know there was anywhere that's 50 feet deep, and now I know. Didn't know that back then. Talking about the drainage. Well, this is, I could come back. Let me just show you now, but I'm going to talk more about it in a minute. This is a really good picture. I like this. If you're familiar with Klamath, you know where this is. Here's Hagglesteen. This goes up to Hagglesteen to the top. You can sit and overlook the lake here. This is Highway 97. Hey.
Oh, it's a touch screen. Yeah.
Touch screen. This is Highway 97. Klamath Falls is back here. That's Buck Island, I think, the name of it. This is something Valley, where there's a bunch of houses back there. Yeah, Plum Valley. Yeah, Plum Valley. That's Plum Valley. But this is a really good example of if you picture in your mind 160 some years ago, before the Klamath project was ever built, this was water. And I'm gonna go into this in a minute, but this is a cool visual. So this would have all been water. And so anywhere since the lake has been drained and diked, the marsh is gone. Here's a little remnant of marsh. There used to be lots of marsh around the lake, and now it's all been drained, diked, and then agriculture. So that's a really good, just a visual as we go on here.
Yeah, I heard about that. They drained it. But they didn't drain everything out. So that lake used to be bigger.
Yeah, no, you're gonna see that in a minute. You'll be shocked when I show you a couple more pictures. Yes. So, but this is a good visual of the lake, and even as I put this study together, I actually didn't know that much about Modoc Lake, which we'll talk about in a minute. But it really helped me to kind of see, because I drive around. I've lived here for 35 years, so I drive around and look at things, and I kind of always wonder, like how the steamer got from Tule Lake over to just down the river here to pick up people and drop people off and everything. And I knew it used to be water, but after doing this and finding out more about Modoc Lake, it helped me get a better visual on how that happened. Oh, okay, I'm not right there yet. Let's go back. Okay. Mostly when I'm talking about Klamath Lake, it's including Agency Lake, I think. So I think most of the statistics that I included here included Agency Lake. Technically, it's two separate lakes. So this is Klamath Lake. If you go back up to the north, there's Agency Lake, and it's kind of a little narrow channel that the two are joined by, but they're actually called two separate lakes. Agency Lake and Klamath Lake.
They used to not just be they drained it, so that little channel's the connection. It used to be one big.
Yeah, 1,000 years ago, it was one giant lake all the way down to Tule Lake and all the way over to Swan Lake and all the way up to Fort Klamath, everywhere. It's one big lake. Okay, Agency Lake, it's connected by a narrow channel. It has an average depth of about 8 feet. I don't know what this means because I don't remember knowing this, but it says the research said it's distinct from Upper Klamath Lake hydrologically in terms of water quality. I'm not really sure why. I did actual surveys up on Agency Lake, so I'm not really sure about that. Average depth, I said that. Upper Klamath Lake was historically eutrophic, but over the past several decades, it's experienced nuisance blooms of blue-green algae, Aphanes floss aquae. Say that 3 times and I'll give you $1. You can say it correctly. Aphanes floss aquae. Just call it AFA. Blue-green algae. It became an industry. I'll talk about that in a minute. So the blooms now are really bad, and it's an example of the lake isn't just eutrophic anymore; it's hyper-eutrophic. A eutrophic lake normally is it's a natural process, and I've seen this happen. If you go up into the Cascade area here, if you go down West Side Road and go to the upper end of the lake, you go up into the Cascades and the Mountain Lakes or Sky Lakes, no, Mountain Lakes Wilderness. Sky Lakes from it. You walk up to any of those lakes, up those little high mountain lakes where they're surrounded by a big meadow. And what happens in eutrophism, lakes eutrophy, and those are good examples. Yeah, those happen in a short period of time. And I've seen this down in California. I spent many, many years in the lake down there. I've watched this happen a little bit, hundreds of years. But the vegetation starts to grow in, the tules, the grass, and everything, it starts to grow in, and the body of water actually gets smaller and smaller. And in 500 years, it becomes a meadow.
Because the plants soak up all the water.
Well, no, the plants grow, the water evaporates, and silt comes in, and things from the surrounding hills and everything else. And so it's just a natural process called eutrophication. So eutrophic happens naturally. But considering the size of this lake, it's hyper-eutrophic because of man-made influences. The algal blooms are a result of the hyper-eutrophication. So that's a big word. Okay. So I don't talk too much about that because so during the summer months, water is diverted upstream from the lake for agricultural use. Water is diverted downstream to supply the irrigators of the Klamath project, and then water is sent downstream through the Link River to meet the flow requirements of the National Marine Fisheries Service. So the lake now, I mean, the river goes from Upper Klamath Lake. It's sourced basically, this whole watershed is the source, most of the source of the Klamath River. You'll see in that some of it comes from what used to be Clear Lake, most of that left. Tule Lake, there's none of that left. And then Swan Lake and some of these other areas. All that water flows over to Lake Ewana and then down the Klamath River to the ocean. And so now there's, and I was going to talk about this in the beginning about history. There's, since Klamath Falls was founded, there's been nothing but water issues. My first slide, water issues, past, present, future. There's been water issues here from when people first got here. And the Klamath Project, which I'm talking about in a minute, really is where when it all started, and when this area got settled. So anyway, there's some of the water requirements downstream, and then the National Marine Fisheries Service controls and determines how much water is needed in the lower Klamath River for fisheries down there, because there's a couple endangered species, coho salmon. They're endangered, so the National Marine Fisheries Service is in charge of management of that. They have to have minimum flow requirements out of the Klamath Lake to go down the river. And then you've got the tribal agencies downriver who historically utilized the salmon that came up the river. And so they're wanting water for their historic and native cultural use of salmon. And now you've got the Klamath tribes up here who utilize the suckers just like they actually utilize the salmon further downstream. Yurok and the Karak, and then now the Klamath tribe up here. So there's just, everybody's at odds. Now there's the Klamath Project, and there's agriculture, and there's farmers, and there's recreation, and there's fishermen, and it's just this convoluted mess, and how it always has been for many, many, many years. Actually, as a result of the flows and evaporation, the lake level generally declines about 6 feet in the summertime between June 1st and September 1st. So I don't know if that's true, if that was a recent statistic, but that's also affected that decline in the elevation of the lake. It's absolutely measured down to the inch by the Bureau of Reclamation and the National Marine Fisheries Service, because there's minimum standards set by what's called a biological opinion, put out by Fish and Wildlife Service and the USGS and everybody else to maintain the sucker populations in the upper lake. So nobody can drop the lake lower for any reason lower than a certain level. And when that level's hit, the biological opinion states, the law states, the Endangered Species Act states, you can't go below that level in order to protect the suckers, otherwise they could go extinct. I don't think I had this anywhere in here, but generally speaking, I'm going to talk about suckers later, but they reproduce really slow, so the reproductive rate is really, really low. And because of the conditions, the hyper-eutrophic condition of the lake, it really affects the suckers. The only place that I know of that, and maybe there's new information, but again, my information's almost 30 years old. If you go up Highway 97 here, just past where the gravel pits are, there's some springs in that area out there. And that's where when the lake level was high enough and there was a lot of water coming out of those springs, it was underwater springs, that's where the suckers reproduced, because those springs created a lot of fresh water that had high levels of oxygen.
For the development.
Yeah, so when the eggs would develop over, so that's kind of a known area. Okay. So I talked about the severe water quality problems that's happened, that the algal blooms, that's recent. Again, this is a 100-year process. What's figure 1905 is really, the agriculture started, the timber industry started.
As are washed into it's causing the vitrification because of the fertilizer manure.
Yeah, I'm going to say this in a minute.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. No, that's a good question. Part of it is natural because of the volcanic system here. So Mount Mazama, which is what formed Crater Lake, the volcanic geology of the area actually has high levels of nitrogen, I think. And so some of it's indigenous, it's native, it's going to happen anyways. But when agriculture and timber started, it sped up the process. So if you look at this whole 3,000 and some square miles of the upper basin, you start cutting the timber off and clear cutting. What happens to the soil? The soil runs into all the creeks, the sediments and everything. Then it runs into the lake and it muddies up the lake. It affects the dissolved oxygen levels. It affects the pH. That increases the eutrophication, the hypereutrophication, and the cattle industry, the upper end of the lake, huge cattle industry at the turn of the century in Fort Klamath, lots of cattle up there. And when the Klamath project started, again, I'm just kind of messing. When the Klamath project started, what happened is they began to drain the lake, the natural system of the lake, all the edges of this lake. I'm going to show you this picture. I'm going to show you in a minute. So may as well show you the number. Skip the statistics here. Let's go to this. This is ancient Modoc Lake. When the Bureau of Reclamation began to build dikes and drain the water, the entire lake, this whole lake that extended all the way up to Po Valley and Lanza Valley, all the way down to Tule Lake, all the way, here's Klamath Falls, all the way up to Fort Klamath on the way to Crater Lake. That was all one huge, large lake called Modoc Lake. I mean, it's been 1,000 years probably before it.
That line trace the shape of the lake by any chance, or no?
No. So you can't, it's not a real good picture, you can't see it, but
But
oh yes, this one here, yeah. So you've got your terrain here and then your flatland here. So this is all this stuff is now anywhere you drive through the basin now, if it's flat, it's agriculture, and at one time was a lake. That's why I showed you this picture. I kind of wanted you to get this image in your mind. Anywhere it was flat, it was lake. So you build a dike, you get rid of all of the marsh vegetation, which actually cleanses the nutrients that come out of the natural processes and the man-made causes. The nutrients, the marshes catch all that stuff and filter it before it goes into the lake. That's all been removed from this giant, what at one time was a giant lake called Modoc Lake, and this was all lake. Again, this is Tule Lake. Swan Lake Basin, if you know where Swan Lake is, this was actually part of it. The water went all the way up to Swan Lake, and when you drive out 140 and you see the Swan Lake turnoff there, that was part of the lake. Again, it's flat, it's the same elevation. Yana Basin.
Sorry, it's the chance. I think to the left. Yeah. I don't know.
Then use the arrows.
Well, I made it bigger. Anyway, so the Yana Basin, all of this, I mean, this whole area was just huge. From Gerber Reservoir to lava beds, to the Klamath Hills, to Stucco Mountain, Malin, Miller Hill, which is Klamath Hills. Here's Miller Hill, here's the airport and the base right there. This was all lakes. It was just all one giant ancient lake called Modoc Lake. It was pretty nice. So anyways, the eutrophication, hypereutrophication came about because of a couple of reasons. One is because just the volcanic soils and the natural things that go into the soil happening, and then mankind came along, built dikes, and when you remove the filtering system, then that had a massive effect. It didn't take not even 100 years, and the water already started to go bad and get hypereutrophic. So I was looking at I just put this in here just for FYI. So it's mostly federal ownership in the Upper Klamath River Basin. The Wainema Fremont National Forest, 1.2 million acres. That's 53% of basically the entire basin. Private is almost 1 million acres. Crater Lake isn't much, 3%, and then on down. Fish and Wildlife, State of Oregon, BLM, Road River, and Shoots. So that all totals about in the upper basin, 2.4 million acres. Timeline wise, I don't think I wrote it down, but I think it was when white settlers came to the west, they encountered some of this way before the Klamath Project, like following the end of the Modoc War. In 1873, settlers began arriving in the region, eager to raise crops and livestock. However, the expanse of lakes, marshes, and wetlands, covering an area today that stretches across what is today the Oregon-California state line, so that's this, it was all marsh and lakes, kept them from developing much of the land. This is where the phrase, I thought I had this in here, the term lake county, that's where that came from, because if you go over to, it's not connected and wasn't part of Modoc Lake, but just go a little bit further over in Lake County. In Lakeview, there's Goose Lake and Abert Lake and the similar system over there that was all at one time connected also. And south all the way to the Pitt River, which is down by Alturas. I think a lot of that was connected. I don't know much about it. Anyway, so back in those days, I want to make it. Well, anyways, population of Klamath Falls around 1900 actually was called Dinkinsville, was 447. And here's downtown Klamath Falls right here. Downtown Klamath Falls right here.
In the water, or no, it's behind the water. This is actually like about 30. It's almost.
So downtown Klamath Falls is right here. This is Lake Ewana. This is Highway 97 right here now. And this little area right here is actually farm. So they fill it with water, then drain it and plant crops. First person to visit the Upper Klamath Basin was Peter Skeen Ogden. He was part of the Hudson Bay Company fur trappers. That was around 1826. When he first saw the Klamath River Basin, he said, the country as far as the eye can reach was one continuous swamp and lakes. He called Klamath Lake Dog Lake after obtaining 9 dogs from the local Klamaths for food. They ate them. They explored the lake and were helped by native guides. They didn't stay in the area too long because they were in search of beaver. The original inhabitants were basically, without going into too much detail, the Klamath tribes had this upper basin, and the Modoc tribes were further south. If you go down the Klamath River Canyon, I'm actually taking a tribal member down there to show him, because when I was with BLM, we found old village sites down there. Some of the stuff is still there. And he's really interested, so I want to show it to him. If I can find that bit down there in a couple of years, but I think we'll find it. But anyway, so most of the Klamaths, he told me that the Klamaths were down there, and there was probably a lot of tribal feuding between the Modoc, who they were further south and over towards Alturas in the Pitt River area, and the Klamath tribes were up here around the Klamath Lake, Klamath Marsh, and I don't know how far out they went. Okay. So basically the Modoc War, that was in 1873. And that's when everything changed for the tribes. They were moved to a reservation actually on the north side of the lake, which ended up was a reservation, then it wasn't, because the government supposedly bought it back from the tribes, and they gave it to the tribes, then bought it back. And it wasn't the cleanest and most honest situation. And so they don't really have a reservation anymore. In the earliest historical records, the waters of the Klamath were never reported clear. I find this interesting and good to know, because it's not like everything in the lake is the way it is because of agriculture, Klamath Project, and timber. It was already not good water. The earliest records of surveyors of the Klamath Basin indicate the waters of Klamath Lake were quality was so poor the horses and the dogs would not drink it, even in the warm conditions of the summer. During an early expedition in the 1840s, John Fremont, who was an explorer, would not allow horses to drink from Klamath Lake because of the foul water quality. I mean, 1840, 1940, so that's like 170 years ago. So that kind of tells you something that, again, the natural process of, it's not all about hyper-eutrophication, but obviously what we're doing since the turn of the century has sped the process of the lake becoming poor water quality.
So you said it was 470 years ago.
1840s. 1940s, more than 100, so that's about 180, okay, close to 180 years ago. The water, there's documentation the water wasn't good.
Due to natural eutrophication.
Yeah, and the volcanic soils and the nitrogens and all the different things that were going into the lake at that time. George Gibbs came through here in October 1851. He recorded that the Klamath River quality was so bad in the autumn that they would have to look for nearby creeks to get water from. They couldn't get it from the lake. Okay. Well, I don't know if this is not. All right, but this helps you see something. So that other map of Modoc Lake, you can kind of see here. This actually is a slide from 1915, I think, or no, 1905 Bureau of Reclamation. Anatomy of the proposed Klamath Reclamation Project. So here's Upper Klamath Lake, Lower Klamath Lake, Tule Lake, Clear Lake, which I think there was Lost River and or short-nosed suckers in Clear Lake. So that's why we had to, when I was with BLM, we had to go over here to Gerber Reservoir. Right, always right. Or there you go. That's why we had to go out there, and the tributaries of Gerber, and historically the tributaries of Clear Lake and the Lost River comes out of Clear Lake and actually flows into the Klamath. Well, maybe it didn't naturally, but after they put the Klamath project in, it did through this thing called the Klamath Straits drain. So everything in the Klamath project, farm country here, was drained and shipped through the Lost River that they created a lot of dams and canals and channels, and it went into the Klamath River over here. Can you imagine the pesticide and chemicals for 100 years that were in that water and still are, that they still ship out to and send it to the Klamath River? Okay, ancient Modoc Lake. There was I didn't know about these guys. I discovered these guys. I did a lot of study when I did the Wild Scenic River study, but I never found these guys to study. 1980, a couple called Dickens. Their name was Dickens, married couple. They actually put this map together and talked a lot about the ancient Modoc Lake. That's why I had not heard too much about this, because I didn't find this in the past when I was working on it. The water would get entrapped. Formation of the area created conditions for water to get entrapped between layers of lava flows. Obviously, lots of lava. Ancient Modoc Lake was about the size of Maryland, and it once covered every acre of land that's now irrigated by the project. Again, looking at these different areas, they were all about the same elevation, somewhere around 4,000 feet. At its largest, Lake Modoc covered over 1,000 square miles. It covered all the lakes and wetlands of Upper Klamath Lake, Lower Klamath Lake. Lower Klamath Lake is down here. Right here, this is where this line goes. We used to have ferries, steamer ferries, running up here to bring people up to Klamath Falls. It was one contiguous body of water. That lake, this lake, ancient Modoc Lake, was 10 times as big as the size of present day Upper Klamath Lake. So it was huge. Again, that's basically what you can see it right there.
It's smaller now.
The Lake Modoc disappeared at the end of the Pleistocene. Okay, so that was a minute ago. I'm not good at geology. I don't remember the Pleistocene is, how long it was, but it's a long time ago. Due to a warming and drying climate. The old Pluvial Lake consisted of several connected arms with an overall length of 75 miles. So probably from the furthest to the furthest 75 miles. Southern end was Tule Lake. The northern end was near Fort Klamath, and it had about 400 miles of shoreline. right now, I've got it written down somewhere, but I actually can remember. I think Klamath Lake, including agency, has about 80 miles of shoreline. Yeah. And if you guys have been around a while, you might remember the old WFW district biologist was Ralph Hobb. Him and I got into a boat one day, and we launched the boat at Moore Park, and we went up. We went on the shoreline, so that's why I can remember it was about 80 miles. We did the whole shoreline. We did an inventory of birds. We were counting birds. So we went all the way up to the lake, to the agency lake, all the way down the west side, and came back to Moore Park. Went through 3 propellers. And we hit lots of rocks. Of course, there were extra propellers along. Do you know that ops?
I don't know, but I read about it in my work.
I think Ralph's still alive. Okay. At the present time, only Upper Klamath Lake has a large body of water. That's the largest continuous surface area lake in Oregon. The geologists speculate that the primary outlet of water from this ancient lake occurred towards the Pitt River. I did not know that. The outlet where this water went, okay, flowed, it didn't go down the Klamath River Canyon, over to Lake Moana, down through Keno, and then down the Klamath River Canyon. It didn't do that. It actually went towards the Pitt River, and I didn't have time to look all this up, but the Pitt River, if we look at it, Alturas is over this way, down here in the Pitt River Indians, that's all down by Alturas. So there was a connection, the water used to go that direction. But what changed that, they feel, is the water eroded a channel into the natural Keno Reef, which I'm assuming is they're referring to somewhere around where the Keno Dam is right now, allowing the water to escape through a new route to the Pacific Ocean. And it occurred around the time of the Medicine Lake volcanic activity. I don't know what that is because I don't do geology. But somewhere, wherever that was, it cut off the flow, the natural flow of the Pitt River, and it redirected the flow into the Klamath River Canyon.
When did they say this happened?
No, this happened in what's called the Medicine Lake volcanic activity. And I didn't look it up. I don't know what it
I'll
means.
just say a long time ago.
That would be a long time ago.
Just
Like really long time. Yeah, really long time ago.
A really long time?
Yeah, really long time ago. Let's check. We're probably talking geologic time things here.
Oh,
I just don't know. Yeah, I don't know when the Medicine Lake volcanic activity was.
Well, if they're geologists, they're usually long time scales.
Yeah.
Say a long time.
So the Modoc Lake began to shrink, creating a series of isolated lakes. So here it is, which initially earned the area the title of Lake County by early settlers. So as the lake receded, and of course, that was way in the past, they created all these little smaller lakes, and then hence the settlers came, and they referred, the early settlers actually called it this whole area, probably, I'm guessing, probably between Lakeview and here as Lake County, because there was lakes everywhere and marsh everywhere.
So they were separate lakes by the time they were married.
Yes. Okay. Well, no, not exactly. From Lake County, yes. I don't know much about further east towards Lake County, but these lakes are still all connected. Probably, I'm guessing, probably, and Basin is just what I know about the historic boats that were steamers that would transport people. You could take a little steamboat from Tule Lake, and there was a drop-off point. I've seen pictures of it somewhere. This is Miller. That's Klamath Hills. This is Miller Hill. The airport's there. It was somewhere in here. There was a dock, and they would drop people off, and then they'd ride horses or a stagecoach to Klamath Falls.
It was receded though.
Yeah, for the most part. Lower Klamath Lake was still here, Tule Lake, and Upper Klamath Lake was still all connected.
But it was still mainly one big body of water.
Yes. Ebbed and flowed because of drought, water, precipitation, evaporation. There was a lot of factors. Okay, Klamath Project. Let's talk about that. Why does it keep showing? That's kind of just another picture. More idea. Okay, so where there is water, there is life. I didn't put that there. That was in the picture. But private water projects began in 1868 in Linkville. Okay, Klamath Falls. A small irrigation ditch was dug near Linkville, and by 1884 had been widened and extended for 15 miles, irrigating 16,000 acres. So lots of water here. People, as they did everywhere, built dikes and channeled the water to grow crops. So that was already beginning in 1884. The Klamath Reclamation Project was approved in May 1905, and $1 million was allocated. Change that to dollars today, I don't know what that would be, but that's a heck of a lot of money. So a huge, huge project. This photo is looking north up the Link River towards Upper Klamath Lake. So basically what you're looking at here is the Main Street Bridge is right over here. The Fable Museum is somewhere in here. And this here goes up to the school on the hill, Riverside. Yeah, Riverside Elementary's up there. Then you hit a few more houses right here by where the current little hydro plant is for the Link River Dam. And then there's the nature trail that goes from the lake all the way up to Moore Park, or the bridge right there that crosses the river over to Moore Park. So, and you can kind of see Klamath Falls. There really used to be falls there until the project. Okay, Klamath Project, National Reclamation Act, which was for the whole country, was signed by Teddy Roosevelt in 1902. And it made extensive agriculture in the upper Klamath Basin possible by authorizing the reclamation of swamps and lakes to increase irrigable acreage. That's basically what the Klamath Project did. In 1906, the newly established Reclamation Service was new, initiated the Klamath Project. It included a network of dams, canals, ditches, and other facilities to drain, move, and store upper basin water. So they begin to manipulate the whole natural hydrologic water cycle back then.
So it'd be nice to divert water.
Yeah, building ditches and dams,
Drain swamps.
draining the lake, all kinds of stuff. Tule Lake became a sump, and you'll hear that word, 1/4 of its former size. So in other words, the water didn't just go sit there anymore. They drained it off and brought it over into areas that they wanted to irrigate for agriculture. So right off the bat, Tule Lake soon became 1/4 of its former size. Another interesting thing I didn't know, this is interesting, to carry out this large scale experiment in hydrological engineering, California and Oregon had to cede their water rights and title to Tule Lake, Lower Klamath Lake, and the surrounding land. That's a big issue because even today, the fight today is over water rights. And there's a whole bunch of issues through the years, even since I've been here working in this. Just who has the water right, who was here first. The natives actually had the first right, but still the Klamath River Compact, have you heard of that? Yeah, I've heard of that. That was another congressional thing. I forget, I used to have to know all that back then when I did the eligibility study, but I can't remember how it worked. But the Klamath River Compact was a congressional thing. It mandated water use and on and on and on, but that all got overridden and changed to where we're at today. But because state of Oregon and state of California ceded their water rights to the federal government, that's why today the Bureau of Reclamation actually has final control of the use of water in the project plans.
Just like it was in the beginning. You know, it's had control
for all these years. However, today, now, in the last 30 years, it's been modified by the Endangered Species Act, endangered suckers, coho salmon, downstream water rights in California, with the tribes up here. So now there's all these, I mean, you can just see what's happening here. It's pretty convoluted as far as who gets what, who's in charge, and how you're going to do this. And I mean, it's gotten straightened out a little bit in the last 10 years because now the dams are being removed, which we'll talk about in a minute. Okay, the Clear Lake Dam, let's see, go back to the picture. Clear Lake Dam was over here. Again, this is the project here. So they built a dam here. They started channeling water, draining water from Clear Lake and Tule Lake, building agricultural lands. The Clear Lake Dam was completed in 1910. The Lost River Diversion Dam, which you guys might be familiar with, that was built in 1912. the Lower Lost River Diversion Dam, 1921. The Malone Diversion Dam on the Lost River was built in 23, and that diverted water to Langell Valley. So this, all that stuff I'm talking about is, so that other picture. Of the, so Langell Valley is here. So water was diverted to Langell Valley. What else did I say? Anyway, that's where the water went from the Malone Diversion Dam, the Lost River Diversion Dam. They start backing the water up and then shipping it back over to Langell Valley, which was probably mostly drained at that time. It's probably marshland, but they built dikes and drained the rest of it. You drive out to Langell Valley now, it's all farmland. Yeah, and just as a personal experience, I also got hired by a consulting firm. If you guys recall the Bryant Mountain Pump Storage Project, remember that one? You remember that? Yeah, so I was out there doing a wildlife series for that. And that was basically these Bryant Mountains right here. And then there was another one, which was past my time, Swan Lake pump storage project, and that's still in the works. And I don't know where that's at, but that's gonna, you guys know that's gonna happen. Depends on who you talk to. Yeah. I think pump storage projects are cool. I mean, it's a little side note. I think they're kind of cool because when I was working in for the Bryant Mountain Pump Storage Project, I really felt personally, as a biologist, that the environmental impacts were not huge, like the Salt Caves Dam. That would have been a disaster, especially now that we're taking dams out. If that thing ever would have got built, that'd been horrible.
Huge dam because of all the erosion.
Well, no, because now they're removing the dam on the Klamath River. So that'd have been a big mistake. It would have been millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars of cost, let alone environmental repercussions, which was bad. It was not a good idea.
They didn't do it.
They didn't do it. No.
I hope you don't mind I'm talking. I hope you don't mind I'm talking. It's helping me right now.
No, absolutely. Okay, clinic in February 1917. A contract between California Oregon Power Company, which is now Pacific Power, and the United States government authorized them to build the Link River Dam. Okay, let's get back to the Link River Dam, which is the upland where the lake, where the Link River starts. Private water projects, Klamath project was approved. Construction on the 9-mile-long canal. This is just a picture of they didn't call it the A canal, but I think this is the A canal, the big canal that they first built in order to send the water out of the lake and out into the project.
Looks like construction has always been messy. Is that 100 years ago?
Yeah, 100 years ago.
It's the same.
Well, 1905, more than that.
It's the same as it does now.
And here's the A canal. So they eventually lined part of it with concrete. That's, in fact, I'm pretty sure this is Moore Park's right over here. This is Lakeshore Drive area. And this is Oregon Avenue right before you get to Putnam's Point, which is on your way to Moore Park. You turn right and you go over to the yacht club and all that area. Pretty sure that's what the picture.
I don't want to interrupt, but that just looks just like the LA River from Los Angeles, and it looks at it's concrete, concrete, and it's actually even about that width too. It's you could walk across it, and yeah, it's just a trickle. That looks better than, but it's just a trickle. Yeah. Since we left.
Just a little historical fact. So 1909, this was all being built from, everything started in 05, somewhere in there. Everything was built. I don't think it was completed. I don't know if I even put that in here. Had to have been the Link River Dam was completed in 1921. So I think probably between 1925 and 1921, everything was being built, completed, so on. So these are some workers. In the summer, a lot of the workers in 1920 left for higher wages in the harvest field. So they go work out into the harvest fields and the surrounding agriculture, leave the project, and in busy months, 200 men and 60 horses worked building the Clear Lake Dam. So it took this was labor intensive to build this Klamath project. Huge.
Yeah.
Link River Dam. So this is interesting since you guys don't know. So historically, the way the watershed worked is, it's called the Klamath, or the Klamath Lake, reef. So basically there's this natural reef right up there by where the road crosses over to go to Moore Park from Highway 97. So 1,000 years ago, there was a natural rock reef, and the rock reef worked as a dam at times. So, yeah, it's just a rock reef, and here they're excavating it, but it's just a rock reef that goes all the way across this narrow channel of the lake. So what that did is act like a natural dam, and it kept the water in Upper Klamath Lake. As the water level got lower and lower and lower, there was hardly any flow going down the Lake River. And so the Klamath Falls during that time, prior to 1900, in the middle of summer, often there were no falls because the reef kept the water from going downstream. And even this happened, sometimes the wind would blow and actually blow water from the surrounding reef area and blow it back up into the lake.
I mean, even from the lower area to the higher.
Well, no, because it was all kind of even at the time. It was a little bit higher, but I just said like this water here would blow back up that way or whatever, and a lot of it wouldn't go down the falls. Another thing that happened, I haven't got into fisheries and stuff, but salmon would come upriver, and I saw a picture. I couldn't find it, but I saw a picture one time where local residents from Linkville were out there on the falls area. And the salmon the Niagara salmon were migrating upstream, and they couldn't get up to the lake because there wasn't enough water. And they were just like reaching in these pools along the falls where there was pools of water, and just yanking out these giant salmon, taking them home and eating.
They were just stuck.
They were stuck, yeah. Yeah, so
the salmon actually go upstream, but
they're going upstream to spawn.
And they have one track line, so they don't move.
Anyway, so that's a really cool picture. So there were the anadromous fisheries, anadromous meaning ocean to spawning area to ocean, so on. They used to come up here and spawn, and probably in the upper Lake Sprague River, Wood River, the other river, Williamson River, and probably even if you're familiar with Annie Creek, I'm guessing Annie Creek probably had spawning salmon at one time, and steelhead. We might have, not sure about that. Anyway, so they were authorized, the Klamath Project and Pacific Power was authorized to build a dam in order to control the flow of the water from Upper Klamath Lake to generate power. So they built a little powerhouse. It's still there. It's on the, you're standing on the bridge on Main Street and looking up the Link River. To the right is town, and to your left there's a Fable Museum. A little way up, was upstream on the left side. That little power generation plant is still there. I think they still use it, don't they? Oh, it's not functioning. Not running. Okay. Anyway, so this is where the dam went in, and once this dam went in, the Link River Dam, complete control was available now. Even today, the flow can be controlled by the Bureau of Land Management. This is a good picture, Larry. But here's the Link River Dam. Here's the Main Street Bridge right there.
So this is out from the lake. It's coming out.
Yeah.
And that's my point from the reef too.
Yeah.
Where's the reef?
Well, basically, I think the reef would be this whole area right here. It was rock, and it was high. It was up really high. It could have been more maybe right here by Putnam's Point where the bridge is. It might have been in that area. I'm not sure. But in the picture where they were building the dam, they called this area the reef right here.
Probably in that where there's water there, it was a high.
Yeah. So this
carved right out.
Yeah. So this would have been a drop off. This was the reef in this area, or maybe further up. I don't know. But anyways, then they excavated the reef.
They just carved it
and put a dam there.
They carved it. So it's a huge rock formation, and they just dynamited it.
Yep. And built the dam.
Wow, that's probably a huge geological change, because rocks change the entire river. How rivers flow, yeah. So that probably
There's a good picture of the falls without much water in them. So this would have been, I'm guessing this is probably at the upper end because of these little buildings here.
It's very salty. Salt. Is that salt?
No.
It's really just
Anyways, this looks like the upper end just because of this building. I think this was at the upper end of the. But anyway, that's kind of what it looked like. Obviously, low flow and high flow, it would be falls. There would be salmon coming up there and going up there. This was an interesting picture I threw in. The future of Tule Lake city site is underwater in this picture. So this is the view of Tule Lake looking towards Bloody Point, which if you're familiar with the area, this is that little mountain that has the pointy thing on top. 1905, here's the same picture now. So lake, no lake.
Is that we went to, I'm actually, I'll just tell you after, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Sheepy Ridge.
Sheepy Ridge, that's not Sheepy Ridge, it's called Bloody Point. Sheepy Ridge would be to the right. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong, but I think Sheepy Ridge is to the right. Not sure. Anyway, water rights approval Klamath project rests on adjudication. I kind of mentioned this, and cessation of all water rights entitled to the federal government by Oregon, California. So they lost their water right during this project. Okay, this is a huge thing too that happened when the railroad came. When they built the railroad, it was for two reasons. It was for the railroad to come, and it was also to control the water. So putting in the railroad was building a dike. So it totally changed the water flow. This is probably along Highway 97 somewhere, looking towards Keno.
That's looking north on 97.
Yeah, north on 97, looking out to maybe towards Keno. Wait, this is the lake. Anyway, so basically all this water I showed you the picture, which I won't go back to in the MoDOT picture. All this water flowed from Lake Iguana over by Keno down into Lower Klamath Lake, down into Tule Lake, and it was all water and all marsh. When they put this railroad in, that sealed it, and now it no longer could flow from Upper Klamath Lake, Klamath River, well, it went to the Pitt River at one point, whatever. None of it could go this way behind me into Lower Klamath Lake and Tule Lake. That sealed it off, and so the flow became controllable by putting in the railroad. Rail company agreed to build a railroad embankment across the north end of Lower Klamath Lake to double its length. So if this is near Lower Klamath Lake, you're at Highway 97 before getting to Ward, somewhere in there, that's Lower Klamath Lake. This looks like, this would give the project the ability to revert spring runoff that would flow south into Lower Klamath Lake. I'm guessing, I could be wrong, but I'm guessing this also is along Highway 97. Probably somewhere between Midland and Oregon, I guess. The thing that throws me off is the logs. But there were mills around here that, they were everywhere, all over the place. And
I would speculate that's
that's in the
97.
Yeah,
That's the second bay
Might be
north.
Algonquin.
No.
South Algonquin.
Well, because there's a log chute there, it's dropping from MoDOT and down into toward the marsh.
right.
But I'm not sure.
Well, it couldn't be. I'll go see this lake up
The highway's not there yet, but
Yeah, the highway's not there, but
that bog pond that bog pond sits in one spot right there.
south of Midland.
No, north.
Town.
It's north between here and Jordan.
Oh,
I
okay.
think that's on the marsh.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Now I see what you mean.
Because
Yeah.
there's like a ridge back there in the distance, and then there's a log chute that came down. You can still see the cut from it.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes it's hard to see some days ago. I don't know.
That's different because 97 hasn't been built yet.
Right.
Railroads there.
Yeah. This is a cool picture I found. Here's one of your steamships you could take around the lake, and this is a cool shot because it's over by somewhere like by the yacht club, and by Geldwin by the golf course. And here's this. Somebody did this picture. It's the site of current day Moore Park is right here. Look at that. It's big open field and really cool picture. Steamboats were an everyday sight. Steamboats were an everyday crossing of the basin on open waters back in that day.
Because there's so much water.
Yeah, water everywhere.
Just like
Now they couldn't go from the Upper Klamath Lake to Lower Klamath.
they couldn't go.
No, because the falls and the Lake River prohibited that.
It was already receding by the time settlers came, that's why.
Well, it's because they couldn't go down the Lake River. It was falls and rock with the rock reef and everything else.
If it was higher, could they go? If it was like ancient lands?
Don't know.
So,
But Lake Ewana down the other end of the Link River, by Main Street Bridge is Lake Ewana. They could come up to Lake Ewana from the Lower Klamath Lake, Tule Lake, from all those other places. Okay. So the reclamation project basically created routing water to 200,000 acres of irrigated farmlands in the Upper Klamath Basin. After World War I, the Klamath Project plots were given to veterans who applied for them. The early homesteaders on the Klamath Project lands had no electricity, running water, or telephone, obviously. Lower Klamath Lake evaporated after a berm carrying the railroad line between Klamath Falls, Oregon, and California cut off its source of water, which is some of what we're looking at the pictures there. I didn't know this. As the lake shrank, grasshoppers, unchecked by insect-eating birds, infested the region. President Calvin Coolidge responded to the disaster by establishing the Tule Lake National Wildlife Refuge. And in 1934, President Franklin Roosevelt's Fish and Wildlife Coordination Act required the renamed Bureau of Reclamation. They changed it to consider the needs of wildlife planning projects. So the Wildlife Refuge was created, the drying of the water created an infestation of grasshoppers so bad that the president had to act. That was somewhere around 1930s, early 30s. I did not know that.
you know, they got that news of that got across country.
Yeah.
That's the bad things.
And of course, you guys know, but maybe you don't know, during World War II, the U.S. War Relocation Authority built 10 concentration camps for 18,000 Japanese Americans on project lands, which was done by Tule Lake.
There's many internment camps around here. Was it a few states that did that? How many?
There were internment camps. All over in different parts of the country. We had a big one here. Okay. After the war, the Bureau opened up. I said that. By the end of the 20th century, and so that would be 2000, there were 1,400 farms operating the Klamath Project, cultivating up to about 210,000 acres of wheat, barley, alfalfa, potatoes, onions, horseradish, sugar beets, and other crops. And there were at that time over 717 miles of canals, laterals, and diversion channels in the project. The canals transported irrigation water from Klamath Lake, Klamath River, Clear Lake, and the Lost River, and Tule Lake, which would allow all that land that we saw in the historic Modoc Lake picture in order to be irrigated, and all those wetlands were gone. Again, think of wetlands as a natural filter for nutrients and other things that are not good for fish, wildlife, water quality, lower dissolved oxygen levels, higher pHs, turbidity, which is a measurement of suspended solids in the water. So fortunately, I got to, speaking of that, I got to work my last day with BLM as a biologist. I got to work on the Wood River. So I went up to the Wood River. It was proposed, it was in process being transferred from private ownership to the Nature Conservancy. And so I got to go up there and I did all of the fish and wildlife surveys on the Wood River Ranch, which is, if you go up Modoc Point Road and turn around, I got there. I can't remember where you turn, but anyways, it's now kind of a wildlife area. It's really cool. There's nature trails. You should go up there and walk around. And the Wood River comes out right close to there and empties into Klamath Lake.
Is that Lake of the Woods? Is that around Lake of the Woods? Which is
No.
we went there.
No.
I think that's another place I think that might be considered possibly dangerous campground. Sorry.
So it wasn't the greatest thing to do at times because I was up in the summer when there was tons of bugs and it was boiling hot. And I was walking in ditch canals with waders on and electroshocking and looking for fish and seeing what was on the Wood River Ranch because they didn't know it was going to be sold to the, I don't know, because we sold to the Nature Conservancy and Nature Conservancy was going to give the management over to BLM, I think, which is who I was working for. So I went and did surveys since I've been doing that kind of stuff. The only thing interesting I found, and again, I could have been infamous for this. I tried to keep this low level because of what I found. But I was at this, there was this little tributary creek that kind of flowed through the ranch, super clean water. and it wasn't very deep, and the Wood River was just over to the right. I don't know, can't remember how it all worked. So I electroshocked and looking for fish, and this frog floated to the surface. I thought, oh, wow. I picked up the frog, and I looked at it and examined it, and used to be really love herbs, herpetology studies, snakes and frogs and all that kind of stuff. So I checked this guy out, looked at him really close. I probably took pictures because I had my camera with me. To go back to the office, the BLM office, looked it up in my herp field guide, and discovered it was a spotted frog. Yeah, and have you heard about the spotted frog?
Aren't they, wait, I'm trying to, I think I know.
Okay, so the spotted frog was a threatened species.
Yeah.
It used to occur probably everywhere in the ancient Modoc Lake,
Yeah.
all the way up to Klamath Forest Marsh and further north over in the Willamette Valley. It used to be really common. But agriculture has decimated it, and so spotted frog populations are really hard to find now in Oregon. So I was pretty sure it was a spotted frog, so I told my supervisor. He said, well, you need to call Steve Cross. He's a herpetologist professor at Overton, Oregon State University. I called him. He said, what? So he came over here and I showed it to him, and I don't remember if we went out and shot another one. He said, yeah, that's a spotted frog. I said, we need to do something about it. So BLM did a contract, actually did the same thing with, if you ever want to know about towns as big or that, I said, did the same thing with the salt caves down the Klamath River. I worked with Steve Cross, Southern Oregon State University, and we did a project. We trapped, misnetted the bats, and he got his students over here, and they did a contract and studied them for a couple of years. In fact, I hadn't been in salt caves in 25 years. We just went down there this summer and found it, which is really hard to find because it's all over going down. But anyway, sorry. So I found a spotted frog, and I could have been killed for that. I could have been blood my doorstep for that because it was another threatened species.
Yeah, I thought they were threatened.
Yeah.
Because I know the tribes, the Klamaths are trying to also, they have their eyes on those still too.
Yeah, or they might be a candidate species, but either way, there's some kind of, they're close to federal protection.
Yeah.
So, got hold of a professor up at Portland State University who specialized in spotted frogs, did a contract with him, and you wouldn't believe it. When he got down here and I took him out, he was just so giddy. He was so excited. He couldn't believe he was like in heaven that I found the spotted frog. Yeah, her professor from Portland State University. Oh my gosh, he went crazy. So it was really fun. So we did a contract. Okay, let's see here. Let's try to finish this up. Lake ecology, hyper-eutrophication prior to the 20th century. This is some of this redundant. I kind of talked about it a little bit. The lake was surrounded by widespread marshes and wetlands, which supported fish, birds, and wildlife, as well as protecting water quality in the lake. Much of the important habitats were drained to be converted to farmland. Talked about that. The lake is naturally eutrophic due to a high concentration of nutrients. Okay, so there's a natural process. The nutrients are coming from the upper basin, the volcanic substrata in the mountains, and so on. In the 20th century, the augmentation of nutrients by agricultural runoff from the surrounding farming valley has caused the lake to become hyper-eutrophic, resulting in blue-green algae blooms above the lake. If you can say the 3-word name of the blue-green algae, I'll give you $1. Hosanna's Amazon Floss Aquae, AFA.
Is that a Latin or is that a?
It's the genus species, which is always Latin. Yeah, of most plants and animals.
It almost sounded like one of the languages of the tribes.
So the resulting algae blooms of the Amazon Floss Aquae, they turn the water an opaque green. I have some pictures.
Oh, I think I see it right there. The bakery.
No, you don't see that. This is the short nose sucker.
This is water.
No, this is clear, but I'll show you another picture. I think I've got it. There's a picture of the short nose sucker. There is a Lost River sucker.
I see a green.
No, not yet. No. There's another picture. That's nice clear water. And this is what those springs look like where they used to reproduce, or they still do reproduce over off the Highway 97, the area I was talking about.
Very clean water.
Yeah, super, super clean water. That's all I got. Oxygen. So the algal blooms create low dissolved oxygen, which there's low dissolved oxygen which can kill fish. High pH. And then obviously with that with blue-green algae, it affects people and like dogs. You can't take your dog in when there's the warnings for the high algal bloom because it's actually toxic when it gets really thick. Oh gosh. Let's see, where are we? Just a couple things I want to mention. Economics. So timber was king from 1860 on. Agriculture became king from about 1915 after the Klamath project started. So both timber and agriculture were the primary economy of the Klamath Basin. The timber went away with the advent or the problem with the spotted owls. Timber cutting was reduced significantly. And besides that, actually all the old growth timber in most of Oregon has already been cut. It's gone. So everything that's being harvested now is second growth timber, which means it's been cut and it came back. So most of your second growth timber, if you go on the west side, you'll see some old growth trees, but not much. Most everything you see, if you go around Lake of the Woods or you go up in Keno, that's all second growth timber. And most of those trees that they're harvesting aren't more than 100 years old, 75 to 100 years old.
I thought I read somewhere that old growth forests have a special unique. They're actually special even compared to second growth that they have even.
Oh, very, very much so.
I think so.
Yeah, hugely so. So that timber kind of went away in the 80s on a decline. Agriculture again has been pretty steady through the 2000s and up to this day and age. Economically, Sky Lakes is the largest player in the area. Klamath County School District is next. Geldman used to be huge, but they went smaller. They sold, went smaller. Collins Products, Columbia Forest Products, which are based on timber. And then OIT, the Klamath Falls City School District, and of course the Air National Guard base is huge to our economy. So that's a little bit about the economy. So here's some numbers. No, it's okay. I must have put it in there. So 2017 statistics, number of farms in the Klamath Basin, 1,005. Number of acres being farmed, 483,000 acres. Average size of those 1,005 farms is 481 acres. The market value of all the agricultural products from those farms, $192,600,000.
I got those bit.
So that's a lot of money. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of economy. It's a lot of things. And I want to leave you with this. So we're going to watch a video. It's 2:30. Do we have time for the video? Okay, but let me take something first. I just want to give you a perspective, kind of a philosophical perspective. And this is where I'm at. This is what I believe. You don't have to believe it, but I've worked in the as a wildlife fisheries biologist. I worked for mostly government agencies, as I told you before. And so what happens with national forests, wildlife refuges, endangered species is the federal government agency is always in the middle. And to the right is the industry people who want to harvest everything. And to the left is the environmental groups. And so I would go out and be the biologist to inventory for a timber sale, just a regular old timber sale. And so I would put in my report it wasn't called an EIS, environmental impact statement, it was called an EA, an economic assessment. So I would put my report in there and the environmentalists would all come down here and start yelling at all the government employees and saying, what about this? What about this? What about this? And most of it wasn't valid at all. And the industry was saying, you guys aren't giving up enough timber. Why are you telling us we can only cut? So the government always been pulled both ways. So I'm not an environmentalist. I'm a conservationist. So that's what I tell people. It's better to be a conservationist. What's the difference between a conservationist and an environmentalist? Environmentalists are extreme, and all they want to do is put a stop to everything, and it's going to cost the taxpayer millions of dollars. They used to come in and challenge our report and say, you missed this species of animal, and it's going to have this effect, blah, blah, blah. We'd have to do everything over again. They would take us to court. It would cost the taxpayers millions of dollars for every little timber sale, every little thing that we should have been doing, but just need to do it in in a conservation type of way, not an environmental type of way, nor go cut every tree down in the forest. See what I'm saying? Kind of in between. So that's what I am. Conservation is the key. Responsibly harvesting timber, responsibly utilizing the natural resources that surround us. Yes, we should utilize them. They were given to us for that reason. There's no reason not to, but do it responsibly. For example, clear cuts. I can't even believe that some forests are still allowing clear cuts. That's horribly environmentally irresponsible. So anyways, that's just the thing. So I just suggest that when you hear somebody say we should get rid of the Klamath project, and if we did that, what would we do? What kind of impact would that have? Well, we would lose $2 million in $200 million in our economy, it has been the primary economy for this basin for 150 years. 1,005 farms would suffer bankruptcy. We would lose almost 500,000 acres in agriculture, which that agriculture goes actually around the world. Our alfalfa from Klamath Basin is shipped to Japan, and they pay top dollar for it all over the place. So I'm trying to give you this perspective of, it's the push-pull thing, the industry versus the environmentalists, and where should you stand? Well, where I stand is kind of in the middle, and I call that conservation. Respectfully, wisely utilizing the resources instead of trying to protect everything or to try to use everything. Does that make sense?
That's even what the natives did.
The natives are really good at it.
That's what
They utilized the resource, but they protected it themselves.
That's
so that they still had it in the future. Yeah.
maybe the litmus test of evaluating good method is how long they lived for a long time there. That probably is a good model. And if they were able to survive, and they had a very tough time, tribes and hunter gatherers. If they could, then
Right.
with all of these communities, this model. We actually have, I think, controlled burns. That the whole idea for controlled burns in the U.S. came from the natives. That's from
Yeah. Okay, I forgot one thing, the dam removal, and I don't know why I thought I put pictures on here. So the Klamath dam removal, is there pictures of the Klamath dams on there? I put dam pictures in there. Oh, it's not in the PowerPoint though, right? Yeah, can you, oh yeah, it's showing up there, yeah. So here's the Klamath dams that are being removed. This has been ongoing for over 20 years. There's been huge fights, like I was saying, big political battles and between the tribes and the Bureau of Rec and the tribes downriver and big, huge battles. So finally, to make a long story short, because it's way too complicated, these 4 dams that were built by Pacific Power, and they don't generate much electricity as far as on of what we need in the Pacific Northwest, so they're finally agreed to take them out. John C. Boyle Dam, Copco number 1, now you're in California, Copco number 2, and Iron Gate Dam. The anadromous fish can't get past Iron Gate Dam right now. So what they did, they built a fish hatchery there. They harvest the salmon and steelhead that come upriver, hatch the eggs, grow them up into fish fry, throw them back in the river, and back down they go. So once these dams come out, it's already been started. One of them's been removed. Copco 2 has actually come out already. I had pictures of that in there. What about the chances of salmon coming back up to the Klamath Lake? Well, that's not likely to happen for many years because of the water quality of the lake. Keno Dam's not coming out, and the Lake River Diversion Dam's not coming out. There's fish passages at both those dams, so eventually they could come up and go upriver. But they've got to deal with all these issues and come up with a big plan on how they're going to utilize it, how they're going to fix up the Klamath Lake so fish don't die off with the eutrophication and everything else. So dismantling the dams is going to happen in stages. I think there's a picture. I don't know if you can find it. It's Copco 2 being taken down.
You want to Copco 2?
Yeah, Copco 2 down. Yeah, there it is. Removing. Yeah, so that was this summer. So that's the first of the 4 coming down.
Where is this one?
Copco is, if you go down, you go out Highway 66, like you're going to Ashland, and about halfway between Green Springs and Keno. You can't drive there, but there used to be a road that would go down to the Klamath River, and that's Copco 1 dam. and it's in California, just across the border.
Mhm.
And then so many miles downstream is Copco 2. That's this one. And then some more miles downstream, you go back to that picture. Is Iron Gate Dam. So those are the 4 dams that are being removed.
This one?
Yeah. So here's Keno. Here's Boyle Dam, which is Boyle Reservoir. That's just right out of town here by Keno. So Copco 1 is just across the border in California. My work that I did when I was a biological consultant, I did all my work was between Boyle Dam and Copco Dam and Copco Lake. So we surveyed all this. We did put out traps to catch sucker larvae. We did all this kind of work in between there. But anyway, as far as the salmon go, eventually they'll be able to come up and utilize these rivers and streams for spawning. Eventually, yeah. And historically or biologically, salmon always return the stream they were born in to spawn. However, about 5% of salmon don't. So that's how, go back 10,000 years, that's how salmon would find another stream besides the Scott River or the Trinity River. They would go to another river because they didn't get there for some reason, and they would spawn, and then there was a new tributary being used for spawning. So about 5% of salmon don't go average to the place and they find a new space. So they're expecting that to happen with the salmonids when they start coming back upstream, all the way up to the Keno Dam. That's a good thing. It's a very good thing. Otherwise, we wouldn't get them back in these tributaries. Okay. Let's look at the video on freeing the Klamath River. About 9 minutes.
Did I talk to you out there?
No, you're fine.
This one?
Yes.
Summertime whitewater rafting on the west coast doesn't get much better than this. Not natural to have so much water flowing down the Klamath River in August. This rafting trip is only possible because of water released upstream from J.C. Boyle Dam.
Our original experience on modified river, the dam is holding back water in the night, it's releasing water during the day, and we're riding on that bubble.
If all goes according to plan, that bubble will be gone by next year, along with J.C. Boyle Dam itself.
Which I can hardly imagine.
It's one of
Spent
the
25 years going down
dams
there,
the utility
fishing and everything.
decided to take out, along with Copco 1, Copco 2, and Iron Gate dams. They're all blocking salmon from swimming upstream, and they'll all be coming out next year in the world's largest dam removal project. Longtime river runner Bill Cross is eager to see them go.
We have a dam upstream from us and 3 dams downstream from us. In the future, when the dams come out,
That's the Boyle Powerhouse. There's channels of water to generate power.
and downstream from here, and a fully connected river from top to bottom.
So great for
But
Kyle.
when the dams come out, there will only be about half as much water in the river in late summer. Not nearly enough for a big raft to make a trip like this. That's a big blow for rafting guide Bart Baldwin, whose business depends on summertime trips that will no longer be possible.
I feel like I'm losing a good friend.
Oh, Noah's River, they're big.
I run this
One of
river.
the biggest
a lot,
river runners
and
in the
it's my
Klamath
favorite.
River, just out of town.
Right now, this is it. This is the biggest bang for your buck that you can get in the summer. 95 degrees, 72-degree water, 42 named rapids, and they're long and exciting and explosive. And that's pretty neat.
Klamath Dam Removal Project took decades to get approval, in part because it's controversial.
It's one of the coffee dams.
Voters say it will bring cleaner water
Copco 1.
with less of this white foam and fewer harmful algae blooms.
There's the green.
Both worsen the combination of stagnant reservoirs and agricultural runoff.
I'm really great to look show here. What I like to look at.
I'm sure you have.
Dam removal will open up a habitat for salmon That's what tribal leader and traditional fisherman Troy Hockaday has been fighting for. During spawning season, he comes to check on the salmon,
Scott,
the
we're
confluence of
huge
the Klamath River
Klamath and
and the
Klamath.
Stone River tributary.
So the salmon will pull up here, till it's time for them to get the river when they know they have to go. The sea of these fish right here right now gives me hope. Now, the hope is for them to get to where they have to go to spawn.
Removing the dams will reopen 400 miles of salmon habitat, including a lot of spawning grounds the fish haven't been able to reach for more than a century. There's no guarantee the salmon will thrive in this drought-stricken basin. But Troy is hopeful.
Fish is our life, especially on the Klamath River, our life and our culture. My goal is to fight for those fish and keep fighting for them until I can't find more. It's where I can have my grandson, who's 1 year old today, to be down there fishing and also here, Grandpa, here's some fish.
The Corps spokesman Bob Bradley says the cost of upgrading the dams to allow salmon to swim upstream was far more than the cost of taking them out.
These are electricity producing dams. Unlike some of the other dams people are familiar with, these are not really flood control dams. They're not used for irrigation water.
So removing that won't really change the
Iron
ongoing
Dam.
fights over water scarcity in the basin.
One of the problems on the Klamath is, there's just lots of demands for a certain amount of water, and those disputes will continue after dam removal.
Francis Gill and Danny Fontaine are worried about losing the lake their community is named after. They're longtime residents of Cutco Lake, where about 75 houses line the reservoir.
And that's where my work stopped, right at the lake.
But the couple recently bought a store, started renovating it.
We're reopening, but it
Actually, it's rent the apartments
like the others,
upstairs. No.
Oh, we're hoping to bring that back.
30 years ago.
The Raptors used to get out here, and the previous owner said they had 300 people here in one day.
I don't know if we can do it all by ourselves, but it'd be nice to have like donuts and coffee in the morning and
We're trying to make it into an old general store from way back in time, just to bring out the feeling to the community.
Problem is, they can't get anyone to tell them what to expect from the bare land and the river that will be their new neighbors.
But yeah, we have these 3 docks that we're gonna lose. We won't be able to launch boats anymore. People are angry and sad because we're suffering a loss. We're going through this grief process for like 21 years up here.
Danny says his job as a real estate agent is harder now. Cutco Lake homes could see damaged water wells and unstable ground when the reservoir is drained and all the sediment stored up behind the dams starts flowing downstream. This is what it looked like when Condon Dam was removed from the White Salmon River in Washington.
Nobody knows what it's going to be like. So when you're trying to sell a home to somebody and you can't tell them what they're buying, it creates a big challenge.
Now he has to disclose, well, your well may dry up or your house may fall off the cliff. Oh yeah, by the way, the lake's going away in a few months too. Welcome.
Empty reservoirs will need a lot of restoration work. And some of it has already started. Workers with local tribes are cutting down weeds and collecting native seeds so they can replant the bare land that's currently underwater.
It feels like we're really making a difference. We're working right now to get these invasive species out of the way so we can give the native plants a fighting chance to grow and do good.
Santos is overseeing the massive job of restoring more than 2,000 acres around the reservoirs and dams.
After dam removal, we are responsible for putting the river and the ecology and the environment back to a functioning ecosystem.
What do you think they'll be calling right now?
I was hoping this week.
I think this is the largest project that any of us have worked on ever. Right now, you're looking at a lake. So what I imagine is, as we can see the chaparral on the hillsides, is for that to continue, kind of move into a grassland system, and then we see a flowing river that meanders, has some ripples, and will be a really pleasant area to look at.
Last rush. Hope we can crash through on this line.
Bill Cross has been imagining that restored river too.
I'm gonna collapse it down. Landing here.
Look
Final.
at all the nests.
Oh, yes.
A few months after our whitewater rafting trip with Bill, we hiked with him to the top of these basalt cliffs, an area known as Ward's Canyon.
Never seen
This
that.
is where he's most excited to see the river reemerge.
I've seen pretty much every inch of the Klamath, and this is the most spectacular canyon on the river.
The river channel here used to be filled with rushing water, but it was drained when they built Cockroach Dam.
The first time in a century, it'll have flow permanently restored to it.
3 years ago, Bill had a chance to preview what it will look like after dam removal. When Pacific Corp diverted water into this channel to simulate future flows. During that test run, he got to raft this stretch of the river.
It was just spectacular to be swept right under that 200-foot high wall. And it's fun whitewater, but the settings just exquisite. There's nothing like this on the rest of the Klamath. My history with river running and river conservation goes back to a time when we were losing rivers on a regular basis to dams, and to have lived long enough to reach a point where we're actually removing dams and restoring canyons is something I never thought I'd love to see.
So we play fish up to cook it traditionally on sticks. Steak it up. This is tradition passed on from the beginning of time. This is how people cook fish. Oh, there it is.
For indigenous cultures that depend on salmon, removing the dams brings tremendous hope for restoring these fish. But for now, Troy Hockaday is still waiting.
The dams are gonna come out, but I'm not gonna celebrate until I see the excavator on top of the dam moving that rock. And once that day happens, then you'll see me jump up and down, screaming to the creator about what's happening. But until that day, I mean, we still got a little more to go, but that's the day I'll celebrate.
Another one?
No, it's fine. Yeah. So that kind of gave you a perspective, file perspective, dam removal perspective. Also kind of helps you to see the convoluted thing I mentioned about rights over water use. And those are just some of the parties, you know. So water is never an easy thing. Water conservation is something that's huge in town, our state, our nation, our world. You know, water is the key to life. That one slide I showed, I forgot what it said. It showed the picture. It said, "Water is something to life." Remember that picture I showed? I forgot what it said. So it's true. And so, you know, we shouldn't, even if we had nothing to do with all of the stuff we talked about today in Klamath Falls, it can affect everybody. I mean, if the agricultural industry just went away, half of this small town that we have here would be gone. More than half, probably. It would have a huge economic impact. So you can't just make these decisions and decide you're going to save and preserve everything, or you're going to use everything. That's why I say you kind of have to find this middle ground between utilizing the resource in an effective and conservation way in order to have those resources for the future. So that's the biggest thing that any natural resource needs to be managed by this kind of thinking is the utilization of the resource, but not taking it all, which is why we don't have old growth forests anymore. They're gone. It's already been taken for the last 150 years in Oregon and most of the Pacific Northwest. the big timber, the old growth timber is gone. It's been taken by money hungry, companies and people. Now we have nothing. So what we've had to do for the last 75 years is deal with that. We've had to deal with the outcome of that economic impact of taking all that timber instead of properly managing it. So the future generations will have the resource, will be able to enjoy the resource and be able to economically benefit from the resource.
Now, I know from environmental science in the previous semester how they talked about the different philosophies of managing it, and preservation, conservation.
Yes. The industry.
I forgot the utilitarian perspectives. I mean, I forgot what the names, but that's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And then just the middle. I mean, I think there might be an answer though, because people have always come in the middle. And that seems to work for many cultures across. I think people tend to manage their environment cross culturally, and if it works, it's like a universal thing that that's the traditional one. Is to use resources, but to keep an eye towards the future, like they would probably think in terms of keep an eye towards generations. I think that's a tradition. It's very traditional perspective.
So we all play a role in this. From this class right here, who knows what you're going to do in the future, or what anybody involved with water resources can do in the future. It's a huge issue. It's a huge job. It's a huge role. If we didn't have water resource managers and people working in this field, it would be for the worst stuff.
Yeah. I appreciate you also broke the historical concept. That's not a new issue for Klamath Falls. It's because of the volcanic soil, it comes since 180 years ago. Water quality.
Yeah, that's why
This makes it even more complicated.
it actually does. Yeah. Even though salmon came in the river and spawned in the upper reaches of the tributaries, that doesn't mean we're going to be able to have to do that in the future. The water quality is so bad right now, something has to be done.
Mhm.
And actually, the Bureau of Reclamation, the USGS, United States Geological Service, National Marine Fisheries Service, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, all the fish biologists, they're all actually working on that right now, trying to come up with a plan for the future, so that one day we can see salmon come up past Keno Dam, up the river, and under the Klamath Lake and the upper tributary. Who knows if that's going to happen? But for sure, eventually they'll be spawning up to, John Boyle Dam, up to the Keno Dam. Pretty certain of that.
Because they're moving the dam, so they're gonna salmon.
They'll be able to come up and eventually.
I had a question, if you don't mind, just to finish off what I was writing. Yeah, the algal blooms cause low dissolved oxygen and was it high pH?
High pH and high turbidity.
Oh.
Turbidity is the presence of suspended solids in the water, and it makes the water brown and dark and murky looking. And salmon, trout, native red band trout. We didn't talk too much about all the wildlife and fishery species, but you're not going to find trout, native red band trout, in turbid waters. This dark, cloudy water that we have around here. They're going to find something cleaner and clear, which does exist, fortunately. Over at Rocky Point, on the west side of the lake, there's clean, clear creeks coming out of the Cascade Mountains there, and that's where all the big fish are, and where the fish summer is over on the west side of the lake. It's all clean, clear water. Boy, sometimes just take a kayak back around and be amazed. The difference. You come to the east side over here, it's all green and nasty and brown. Go over there to Rocky Point Resort and drive around over there, look at some of the creeks coming in. It's clean, clear water.
Yeah, I don't know this place.
West side of the lake. Okay, well, thank you. Sorry I took up all your time.
No,
It's fine. Thank you so much for coming on. This was
Yes.
great.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.